what is the goal of all Christian instruction? Worship, that's right. So we always start with that. And so you guys are going to hop into your groups. I'll just split the room tonight. It looks like we could do well with that. So splitting the room in half. Make sure you introduce yourselves. I know there's some new faces in here, which I'm really excited about. So looking back on this week, what is one way you experience God's kindness to you? All right, so that's how you guys are going to start. Just take something this week that you experience. Hey, that was God being very kind to me. So take your time, do all that, and I'll come interrupt you very soon. Really great. All right, staying in your groups, and I'm not going to limit you this week. You don't have to introduce yourselves again unless you didn't get to this last time. But how do you define peace? You're not limited. However you want. You can use Christian jargon. You can use whatever you want. How would you define peace? All right, back in your groups. Define peace. All right, I'll bring you guys back. What were some words, phrases, thoughts that you guys had? It's a pretty big word. You know, you kind of, how many of y'all, your first thought is you went to a negative. It was the absence of something. And then did you go, but it feels like more than that? Did that kind of the direction your thoughts went? Okay, throw out some phrases that that you associated with peace or things that you said. Absence of conflict, good.
Inner calm despite mayhem surrounding you. I like that.
Like I said, it was like a settling of the soul.
Settling of the soul. How many of y'all went like 1960s, peace sign?
That was the first one.
Peace not what? Okay. I guess it was just me. All right.
Jim quoted a song.
Which song?
Peaceful relationship. Not sex.
Is there a place when I said peace that you thought of? Did anybody think of a place? Alex, you're nodding. Where did
I'm nodding because my counselor, when I started doing certain work with her, made me find what she calls safe, calm place. It is like anytime I envision it, it is peaceful to me, and it's the mountains. On the mountain, no one around when it's like snowing and like perfectly silent and still.
Can I ruin this moment real quick? Okay, so the reason why she was alone is because I wore too many clothes and I went and hid behind a giant tree and stripped down and took my underlayers off and put them back on. And as that was happening, a group of men were also walking up. So then I'm like crouching in the snow, like low-key panicking because I'm a very modest person. And I'm like just trying to like sit in the snow and then get my like ski pants back on, but without my long underwear and all this stuff and everything. And then I like run up to her and she's like, I've just had the most peaceful moment of my life. And I'm like sweating. I was like,
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
and she like even took a video of it and just like 360 like took it. And I was like, did you point the camera by that tree over there at any point? She's like, no. I was like, okay. Okay, you guys are approximating quite a bit of what we're going to be talking about tonight. Hebrew is a big word, okay? So on the left, I've got peace at the top on the left. That's how you write Hebrew, shalom, if you've got very bad Hebrew handwriting. It is a big word. The Hebrew word for peace, shalom, is a word that shows up a lot in the scriptures, and it has a multivalent meaning. There's a lot of meaning to this word. So where we will often translate simple things as peace, if you go under it into the Hebrew where shalom is, peace has like a big definition behind it. It's sort of like, love is bigger or hope is bigger than what we think of it. So it is so much more than simply the absence of strife or violence, but it does include the absence of strife and violence. So that is a very true part of it. If you are in strife or you are in violence, you are certainly not in peace. But Brad said this, and this is very a very smart observation. You can have no violence and no strife and not feel at peace. And you would say something's missing, and I would say that something missing part is that peace that's going to complete what you need. And so we're going to look at the Hebrew word, we're going to look at the Old Testament understanding of peace, and then we'll dip into the New Testament, and then we'll do an exercise in peace tonight. So one of the big definitions of peace or shalom is to complete or make something whole. And so one of the big examples that we have of this is in 1 Kings 9:25. Solomon gets to dedicate the temple. Why does David not get to dedicate the temple? Does anybody remember? He's a violent man. He hamstrung those horses, and God said, you will not build me a temple. Your son will. Not that Solomon was that much better, but he wasn't as violent as his daddy. So Solomon finishes the temple, and he, in 9:25, gives a big speech, and he places, it says, he kind of places the last stone, and it says he shalomed it. He completed it. The temple is finally what it needs to be. It's complete. And so that's part of this idea of shalom, is that whatever piece was missing, you got that last Lego, and you very satisfyingly click that thing in, you have shalomed your Lego set. You have brought it to a place of peace. It is no longer incomplete. It's the same thing said when Nehemiah, so the story of Nehemiah, so Solomon builds the first temple, and then it gets destroyed in 586. And so later we have these reforms that bring the Israelites back into the land under Zerubbabel and Nehemiah and Ezra. And Nehemiah, when he finishes building the walls, he says the same thing. We have now shalomed the walls. We have made the walls complete. And so that's that idea. It is also to have peace in a relationship. So it does mean no strife. So in Job 22:21 is an example of talking about, I'm pretty sure this is between Job and his, and it might be Job and the Lord. I was threatened today by multiple people not to call on them to read. So I'm not going to name it, Robin, Vonnie. I don't even know where Job's at in the Bible. Job is, but this is basically saying you, I believe it's translated peace. Jess, will you find Job 22:21 for me and tell me how it's translated in the CSB?
Come to terms with God and be at peace.
Peace.
This way, good will come to you.
Yeah, so this is advice from one of the friends. Now, this friend is wrong in his advice, so he's also saying, like, Job, clearly you're sinning, that's why this is happening. So the friend has bad advice, but what he's saying is you will have shalom with God. You will have a lack of strife with God if you just start obeying. It's bad advice in this particular moment because we know Job was an upright man, but the idea there is peace. Proverbs 16:7 is a very interesting passage because God is promising that if the person is kind to their enemy, there will be a lack of strife here. And so in Proverbs 16:7, it says, when a person's ways please the Lord, he makes even his enemies to be at peace with him. Really fascinating proverb. Are Proverbs promises? No, good. Okay, very good. So this isn't always true, right? Some of you would say, hey, I'm walking with the Lord and my enemy is not at peace with me. But what it is saying is that God's peace is so big, he can even make that strife between you and your enemy go away if you walk in a manner pleasing to the Lord. So no strife. It also can mean to make restitution or recompense. This is really interesting. So I wronged Jim. We now no longer have peace between us. The steps I take to make right what I broke is shaloming. I broke the shalom, so I can make shalom and restore that. It's the same way that we talk about justice and righteousness in the Bible as well. So righteousness is this idea of there's equity in the relationship. There's a right standing in the relationship between Jim and I. And we, regardless of status, so Jim's ancient Near East, he's a man, he's up here, I'm up here. Righteousness says, but we're going to treat each other like this. But then Jim decides he steals my lamb and slaughters it and whatever. So now we're not like, now we're like this. Jim can make movement to restore that, and that is justice to restore us back to this point of equity. Now, the same idea is the way that the Bible talks about shalom. We are at shalom with each other. Jim breaks, or I break shalom. I can take shaloming steps to return it. So what's interesting is so many times when you read the law code in the Old Testament, it says pay back. It's the word shalom. In other words, you need to restore the peace between you two by restoring whatever it was that was taken, whether I can just replace the thing that I took or I can pay for the thing that I took. So Exodus 21:34. Jess, you have that one? You're just going to be my gal because you didn't threaten me today. And you're reading CSB? Okay, I have my CSB too, so we'll be set. You're good. I actually have it here if you want me to grab it, if you want to get ready for the next one. All right, it says the owner, okay, so when a man uncovers a pit or digs a pit and does not cover it, and an ox or a donkey falls into it, how many of y'all have done that lately? I hate it when that happens. The owner of the pit must give compensation. He must pay it to its owner, but the dead animal will become his. That pay it to its owner is shalom. Isn't that interesting? So you're making right the thing that's wrong. There's an actual ditch in my backyard right now that I dug. And so I've been very careful in walking people out there, but please don't fall in this giant ditch. But that is what homeowners insurance is for. So if you don't think the Bible still applies, these laws don't apply, they do apply. And if someone breaks their ankle, I will pay for your ankle. Please don't fall in my ditch. But I will shalom you back if you break your ankle, unless you're Robin and Alex, in which case you're on your own. You knew the consequences of living here. Jess, Leviticus 5:16.
He is to make restitution for his sin regarding any holy thing, adding a fifth of its value to it, and give it to the priest. Then the priest will make atonement on his behalf with the ram of the guilt offering, and he will be forgiven.
So a guilt offering in the Old Testament is you knowingly sinned against God. So you come to the temple and you say, hey, here's my guilt offering. I'm giving it to the Lord. You are shaloming back to the Lord. You are recognizing I broke shalom with God. I broke peace with God. And I'm making a restitution. It's that word shalom there. Isn't that interesting that we can define this word peace in big, big, big swaths? Have y'all ever heard this before? Has anybody ever told you that word was shalom under all that?
I didn't know it was a verb.
You did or did not? Oh, you didn't know shaloming was a verb? In fact, most of the time it is. Isn't that interesting? Most of the time, and it shows up, if you really want to know, as a PL verb, not a Cal verb, which is very interesting if you're into Hebrew. I am not, so that's all I'm going to say. So it can make restitution, it can make recompense, it can restore what is broken. So Job 8:6, Job has been destroyed, right? So if you remember the story of Job, the accuser, the adversary is talking to God, and he's like, and the adversary's like, hey God, Job only follows you because his life is going well. And God says, have your way with him. You can do anything you want, just don't kill my dude, and he will still worship me. And they're betting on Job's life. Anybody else uncomfortable? Should be. And so the enemy says, great, and he kills all his flock, he kills his children, he gives him leprosy, gives him all, he like basically just throws everything he can at Job. And Job says, no, my tents will be shalomed by the Lord. They will be restored by the Lord. He does not lose faith in God. Even has friends come and give him the worst advice. And he's like, guys, his wife, this is why his wife is great. Hey, babe, just curse God and die. Thanks, hon. But Job doesn't lack faith. Now, Job is not perfect in his faith through that. I mean, there are times when he comes and questions God, and God's like, Job, gird your loins. Were you there when I made the foundations of the earth? And Job's like, nope. And then guess what God does in the end of the story? God shaloms his tents. God gives back to Job what the enemy took from Job. It's not a literal story, guys. I don't think the devil and the Lord are up there just chatting and betting on us. But it's meant to show us that there are people who will worship God even when they're walking through the valley of a shadow of death. And it's an example to us of God does restore the years that the locusts have eaten. And here's an example in Job. So I don't think the Lord's up in heaven throwing dice, trying to decide what to do with you guys. These are really significant passages in our Bible that have shalom. Sometimes as a verb, Karen. It's pretty amazing. Don't y'all wish Emily were here, the word nerd? That'd be fun. Okay, so 2 Samuel 12:6. If you guys remember, David takes Bathsheba, another man's wife, and he takes her and he has a sexual union with her. And Nathan, the prophet, has to come and rebuke him. Now, the best way to rebuke someone who has way more power than you, tell a really good story. And then when they get mad at the person in the story, you say, oh, you are that man. It's one of the best moments in the Bible. C.S. Lewis says the thing that story is able to do is it sneaks past those ever watchful dragons of the mind. He says the mind is like two gargoyles standing there making sure that nothing hits your heart. And he says, so story sneaks right past me. You're like, I'm just telling you a little tale about a man who took a little lamb. And David's like, that man better shalom that lamb. That's what he says. The man who took that lamb, he better shalom what he did. And Nathan goes, I'm so glad you said that, bud. You are that man. And David realizes, oh, okay, I've made a huge mistake here. But it's the word shalom there. Has anybody ever heard that when you've heard this story taught? Same. Joel 2:25. In Joel, the God's righteous anger and judgment shows up like locusts. So there becomes a famine in the land because the locusts come in and kill all the crops. But Joel says to us, hey, even though God's anger is burning now, there is a day coming when God's anger will relent and he will pull back. And he says he will restore to you the years that the locusts have eaten. It's just what we see him do in the story of Job. That restore to you is shalom. God will give you, he will make right what is currently wrong in your life. God will shalom for you what has been taken from you. Even though, why did the locusts come? Whose fault was it? The people. They forfeited their own peace. And God says, I will restore your peace to you. I will give it back to you in a full fold. Isaiah 57:18 talks about God repays the afflicted with comfort. That word repay there. God shaloms the afflicted. God gives peace to those who are afflicted, which is a really beautiful passage there. And then Martin and I were talking about this morning. So in the ancient Near East and in the first century Greco-Roman world, there is a heavy emphasis on a benefaction world. And the way benefaction, and this is still true in many Eastern countries today. So this is, and frankly, sometimes in America. So how many of y'all have ever lived in a household where you had a birthday, someone brought you a gift, and your mama made you write a thank you card because it's the right thing to do, okay? How many of y'all lived in that world? How many of y'all live in the world where you just kind of have gifts around Christmas time in case someone gives you one because you know you need to reciprocate? Okay, that's from the benefaction world that just hasn't gone away. In the benefaction world of the ancient world in the East today, it's a much more sophisticated system. Everybody kind of knows what you owe in these systems. So like an example, in Kurdistan, I have a friend who's a missionary over there, and he says, when the neighbor comes and they bring you a treat, they bake you Turkish delight, whatever. If they bring it in a glass pan, they expect you to bake a treat when you return it. If they give it to you in something disposable, they don't expect a treat in return. And he says, and there's always conversation. He started realizing his wife was not making too many friends because she'd go, Debbie, that is such a beautiful cardigan. Well, in their world, that means I want your cardigan. And it put a burden upon you to give me it. And then they would give her the cardigan. She'd go, I don't want the cardigan. They'd be like, well, kind of have to now. And then he realized one of his friends was like, hey, I can't name his name, but he was like, we call him Denver, that's not his name, but he was like, hey, Denver, we have invited you to our house 3 times now, and you have not invited us, and if you don't invite us, like our friendship will be over. That's how that works. Because by not inviting us, you're communicating to us you don't want to be our friend. And so in a benefaction world, any gift expects reciprocity, okay? Which is why in the Jewish world, kindness to the poor was really an invention of Yahweh. You wouldn't give kindness to the poor because they can't give you anything back. You give to those who can reciprocate. You give gifts often to those above you because you hope they will give you something from above up. Which is why when God says he repays, he shaloms kindness to those who are kind to the poor, that's God's way of saying, I'll cover the tab. So when you give to the poor, they can't give you anything back, but I've got the bankroll here. So I will cover your kindness here. And this is how God is talking about the shalom. And he says it of 2 people group that you would never be kind to because they can't give you anything back. He says it of the poor and of your enemies. Because if you expect your enemies to repay you, they're probably not going to. And they're going to think you a fool for having been kind to them. Because you're not going to get anything in return. And God says, no, you will get something in return, but it will be from me. It won't be from them. And so even in this idea of peace, God is creating shalom in a world that doesn't want shalom. The world wants reciprocity. I give, you give. I give, you give. And we're climbing this ladder. And God says, oh, no. Don't worry about the ladder. Don't worry about the reciprocity. I will cover the bankroll for you guys. And this is a really fascinating, people read this and they go, this is bizarro in the ancient world. And yet God is saying, this is why we're kind to those who can give you nothing in return, because I will shalom for you what you lost. So be generous. Be generous to the poor. Be generous to your enemies. And he talks about when you are kind to your enemies, it's like heaping coals on their head. They don't even know what to do with it. And he says, I will repay that, though, whatever you lost by being kind to your enemy. And so these are probably, for me, the most interesting shalom passages in all of the scripture. So shalom, if you're picking up on it, is not just the absence of war, but it's the presence of something better in its place. It's a wholeness. It's a made rightness. It's when amends have taken place. It's complete. There is absence of strife, but there's also reconciliation. And so the way that I would define it, and other people define it, is everything is in its right place and right relationship. The last Lego has been placed. If you stole a Lego, you gave it back. Relationships have been restored. Everything is in its right place and its right relationship. That's peace. Now tell me, when that's happening for you, how do you feel? Huh? Right? When this isn't true, do you feel internal peace? Do you wish things were different? You think about it, you know on it, right? How many of y'all leave a party and you replay the party and you think, oh, I think I said something dumb, I put my foot in my mouth, and you have no peace? And how many of y'all call the person? Hey, I made that joke. Said the Longhorns were garbage and they shouldn't have made the playoffs. I'm sorry. Will you forgive me? And they say, yeah, I forgive you. And you go, okay, I can go to bed now. That's peace. That's a dumb example, I realize. But that is That's how you restore that, right, internally. How many times do we not move toward that, though, and we just shove it down? Do you get it? Do you get peace when you do that? No, peace is active. Peace is vulnerable. Peace moves toward the person. Peace is initiative. Peace is saying, I think I broke something here, and I need to make it right. So everything is in its right place at the right time, which is why predatory peace doesn't work. If you've been at St. Jude, we talk about predatory peace. Predatory peace is when you look at somebody and say, hey, if you're going to keep fighting about this, you're breaking peace. And we say, no. The peace was already broken. We're fighting because it's not fixed. And I'm trying to move towards it, but I have to move towards it through conflict. And when people are so averse to conflict or reconciliation or amends and all of that, they go, let's just keep the peace. Peacekeeping is not peacemaking. And that is, in fact, predatory peace. And the number of relationships that have been dashed upon the rocks, and people blame the one who's often willing to stick their foot in and go, hey, something's not working here. And many times, because we live in a culture of niceness where we live, some of us didn't pick up on it, and that's all right. I'm looking at you, Jim. Jim and I have never been accused of being nice, but that's all right. We have our other problems. They're watching a movie called The Holy Lands. I'm so intrigued. Many of the names, I'm like, I don't think I'd watch that, but I would watch a movie called Holy Lands. If y'all don't know, there's a movie viewing thing down the hallway, and yeah, they take off. Anyways, it doesn't matter. They turn off the lights, though, when they start the movie. But this is, the peace of the Bible is costly. You know, niceness is like, we're going to pretend like we don't have a problem. Oh, bless her heart. That's not peace. Peace is willing to say, hey, I'm really sorry. And it's more than saying sorry, it's making amends for the thing that you did. How many of y'all have been in a scenario where somebody wounded you so big, and they go, I'm sorry, are we good? And something inside you goes, yeah, I don't feel like we are. I feel like you're trying to move past the conflict, but we didn't fix what was broken. And the biblical piece says, no, there needs to be amends, there needs to be reconciliation. We have not gotten back to shalom. And often the process of restoring shalom takes time. It certainly takes humility. It demands forgiveness. And at times it demands restitution, right? I don't know if you were growing up in a home where like you break your sibling's toy and you got to pay them out of your bank account or your piggy bank or whatever. And I think we have this biblical understanding of grace where we're like, everything's forgiven. I'm like, forgiveness is one thing, but restitution also restores relationship. If I want to rebuild trust, then I'm going to do more than say sorry. I'm going to make amends for what I've done. And I'm going to own up to it. And I'm going to say to the person, like, you tell me the extent of the pain here, and I will move that far to you to restore what is broken. And so peace is a big, demanding word on us. And so we need a lot more kindness and a little less niceness in our churches and in our understanding of peace. Are y'all tracking with me? Cool. Yeah.
I think what you're saying is so powerful. Step 9 up there is all about amends.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we talk about is we don't go into somebody we've wronged and say, I'm sorry. For one thing, we've said that our whole lives. But the other thing is it's about us. I'm sorry, inherent. Would you forgive me? And who's that about?
Yeah.
Me. So the thing that is always said is how can I make this right? How can I make it right? And then just be quiet. Let them come up with something.
It's good. It's really good.
And it's powerful.
Yeah. Yeah, because the reality is you say that and you think to yourself, that is such a risk, because maybe they'll say something beyond what I'm capable of, but maybe also they'll say something that rebuilds trust and wholeness and relationship in a way you've never experienced. And that heals you and it heals them. Because how many of you, the sorry thing, right? I mean, that's the thing is like, we know people, we go watch their feet, right? Their mouth is doing this, and we're like, I don't think you are sorry. And it's not to say there won't be grace for that, but there is a relational building and trust building that has to take place, and that's the amends process, which is different. So let's talk about predatory peace. The prophets are a case study in this. The prophets, if you don't know, there are good prophets and bad prophets in the Bible. They're very fun. So 1 Kings 22 is like a really fun story because the kings will always find a prophet willing to tell them what they want for the right price. And so what's so difficult for Israel and Judah is they experience a moment of great prosperity by oppressing the poor, by doing all the things God said, please don't do this. I rescued you out of Egypt. You're going to be a people set apart. You're going to be righteous and good and just. And they said, but what if we're not? What if we just enslave people and steal things and put our foot on the neck of the poor? But we'll bring calves to the temple. We good? And God's like, no. And so he sends all these prophets in. But wouldn't you know, there's other prophets that are willing to tell a different story. And 1 Kings 22 is one of my absolute favorite. So Jehoshaphat makes an alliance with Ahab. Ahab's always bad. So if you ever hear Ahab's name, you're like, you're a butthead. And Ahab gets prophets that say to him, because they want to go to war, they want to go win this war. And so he gets a bunch of prophets, and he's like, hey guys, are we going to win this war? And they say, yes, you will have shalom. You will have shalom if you go into war. And Jehoshaphat says, we might want to ask somebody who actually speaks for God. And so they have this other prophet. And Micaiah is like an actual prophet. And they say to Micaiah, could you just tell us we're going to win this and have shalom? And he says, I'll probably just say to you whatever God tells me. And so Micaiah gets up there and he's like, yeah, no, you guys are going to suffer defeat. You will not have shalom. And they're like, see, this guy never tells us what we want to hear. And you're just like, it would be so funny if it weren't so tragic. And 1 Kings 22 is a narrative of what the other prophets say over and over again. Okay, so Jess, will you grab Jeremiah 6:14? Because what you start seeing is the true prophets of God, the ones whose names are in the books that we, other than Jonah, he's a butthead. Jonah's a butthead. But the rest are pretty good guys. You will start hearing the same theme over and over again, whereas there are prophets that want predatory peace. We'll tell you whatever you want to hear. You want to win? King, go ahead. But the true prophets of God say things like this, like Jeremiah 6:14.
They have treated my people's brokenness superficially, claiming peace, peace, when there is no peace.
And he's talking about false prophets. He's saying you go and you see the brokenness of Israel, and you see the brokenness of Judah, and you don't speak for me. And instead you say, hey, there's shalom, but there is no shalom. And so the true prophets are saying, stop saying there's peace. There is no peace. Ezekiel 13:16.
Those prophets of Israel who prophesied to Jerusalem and saw a vision of peace for her when there was no peace. This is the declaration of the Lord God.
Again, you say there's no peace. Now, here's the thing. Jeremiah actually, he's a prophet before the fall of Judah and then after. So you kind of get both messages. But this is before the fall. Ezekiel is before the fall. They are saying this to a nation that is experiencing great prosperity. And they're saying, you don't have shalom. And they're like, look, the temple's huge. We have God on our side. We're Abraham's children. And the actual prophets of God are going, you keep saying shalom, shalom. You don't have shalom. And they're saying, no, we got peace. We're winning battles. We're increasing our wealth. We have peace. And they're going, you don't know what peace is, if that's what you think peace is. And then Isaiah 48:18.
If only you had paid attention to my commands, then your peace would have been like a river and your righteousness like the waves of the sea.
Isaiah's like, you don't have peace. If you would have stuck with the one who is shalom, you would have peace that runs like a river and righteousness that flows. You do not have peace. But because they don't have strife against other nations, because they're winning their battles and they're increasing their wealth, they are saying, oh, we have shalom. Yeah. And Isaiah and Jeremiah and Ezekiel and Amos and Micah and Joel and on, Elijah and Elisha and on. You do not have shalom. And they're like, tell that to my bank account. You seen the Rolls Royce? How many of y'all know people who point at the bank account and they point at the fact that they're not fighting with their spouse because frankly, they left them, and they're saying, we have peace. And you are looking at them going, you don't have peace. How many times have you seen that in this life? Or how many times have you seen people say, I thought I was chasing peace. I got the money, I got the job, I got the car, I got the girl, I got the thing, and I don't feel peace. How often does that happen? Because what they're after is predatory peace. Actual peace is everything is in its right place and right relationship. So you can tell Jehoshaphat and Ahab all you want, peace, peace, but Micaiah's still going to come behind you and go, there ain't no peace. Good luck. And they go off to war in that story and they lose. So if you just stick with God is a good thing in the Bible. If you're not sure, just stick with God, but, it doesn't always turn out that way. This is a case study. Peace is not winning. Peace is not wealth. Peace is not prosperity of land. Peace is not opportunity. Peace is everything in its right place and its right relationship. And if you chase the wrong kind of peace, you will get exactly what you're chasing. Nothing. Vapor. Vanity. Tom Brady won like his 5th Super Bowl. And I remember he did an interview. It was like on, I think it was 60 Minutes or Barbara Walters or one of those real interviews. It wasn't a sports interview. And they said, how do you feel? And he goes, so empty inside. I've won everything I can win. I married the most beautiful woman. I have a family that loves me. And I am empty inside. And I remember being like, bruh, well, do I have good news for you? And then what happened? He chose football over his family, lost his wife. He's not playing football anymore. What was it worth? One more ring. You still feel empty inside? How many rings would it take to fill up Tom Brady? 6 was not the answer. So you have to keep going, I guess. Predatory peace is very desirable. But it is, in the end, it will destroy you like it destroyed the Israelites because they sought shalom where there is no shalom. So when we get to the end of the Old Testament, shalom, everything in its right place and right relationship, is not happening. And the reason why is because you cannot find shalom outside of the one who is shalom. And that is what the Old Testament ultimately comes to. You guys are looking for peace. You're looking in the wrong place. And so Isaiah tells them, no, the one who is the Prince of Peace is going to come. And his kingdom of peace will have no end. If you want shalom, you have to go to the one who is shalom. You cannot chase it in wealth. You cannot chase it in opportunity. Instead, you have to understand that a child will be born, Emmanuel, God with us. You guys know this song, Prince of Peace, mighty God, Holy One. I should make Carter sing that this week. We should make him do that one. We were talking about songs. Martin said we could sing Christmas songs before Christmas today. So we scheduled a neurology appointment. So, no, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. Shalom. Jess, Jeremiah 29:11. You grab it.
For I know the plans I have for you. This is the Lord's declaration. Plans for your well-being, not for disaster, to give you a hope in the future.
Plans for your well-being? You want to guess what the word is? Shalom. The one who is the Prince of Peace is going to come in the midst of them being taken out of the land, in the midst of their rebellion, in the midst of their exile. God sends Jeremiah to the people and he says, I haven't forgotten you. I still have plans for you. And those plans are for you to be shalomed. I will give you back what you lost. But if you think it's the land, if you think it's the wealth, if you think it's the temple, you do not understand. The real temple is coming. The real land is coming. The real home is coming. The real peace is coming. The real hope is coming. The real love is coming. I have a plan to shalom you, and the plan is I'm going to come for you. I'm going to come for you. And then you will finally have the peace that you so desperately desire. That's how the Old Testament ends. And then that's how the New Testament begins. The Prince of Peace. Mighty God, holy. Okay. I won't make you listen to me sing. This is how the Old Testament ends. We do not have the shalom we want, but we believe a shalom is coming. And this is why Advent is so significant, because shalom came. So thinking about this big idea of shalom, back in your groups, if peace is bigger than just no strife, who is a peacemaker in your life and how do they make peace? Because you might know someone who avoids conflict, but hopefully by now we know that is not a peacemaker. Now they could be, but who is someone who looks like what we just described? Don't say Jesus, I mean a real person. And how do they make peace? Who's the person that seeks to put everything in their right place and their right relationship? talk about it. All right, break into your groups. All right, I'm going to pull you guys back in. Does anybody want to share? Well, first of all, let me challenge you all, because this is the season of giving. Reach out to the person, even if you didn't share, and tell them, hey, I think you're a person of peace, and that's important to me, so reach out to that person. But secondly, does anybody want to just, who is one person from here, answer, and then one person from here, who's somebody that's a peacemaker, and how importantly, more importantly, do they make peace?
I said Eli.
Oh.
I think he's a real peacemaker. I think how he does it is like pushing past that surface level and like the cheap peace, but he does it in like a very genuine and gentle way.
Yeah, that's sweet. Miss those two. Miss those two. What about this side?
I said you. Have taught me a
Oh,
lot.
stop.
I know. I'll pay you later.
Thanks.
Um,
I pay you. That's how that works. I pay you for the compliment.
that is correct.
Yeah.
Abuse buyer.
I'll pay you later. Yeah. That's very kind.
Yeah, because I think you've taught me a lot about how to have the whole conversational conflict, and that it's about more than just, it's usually about.
Did you say the same thing?
An understanding of what broke in the relationship and getting back to right with the relationship.
You can be like Mark Twain here, you can just say, when people give me compliments, I'm always, not really comforting because they never talk long enough.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Oh, we got to stop for time. Gotta stop. I don't know that could be said of me most of my life. So that's an encouragement of what I think the Lord. I enjoyed conflict when I was young. I didn't enjoy shaloming it. I enjoyed winning it. But I, the capacity to hurt others is very big, which means then the capacity to restore has to be big. And that requires for me, at least with the two women, that probably hurt more than anybody else just because of proximity. Just like, I don't want to rush through the conflict and risk losing two of the most important people in my life. And so I think if you're going to have the capacity to hurt the way that I do, you better have the peacemaking capacity, or else you won't have a ton of friends. And I have two, so that's about how I'm doing. So there we go. No, just kidding. Thank you, Alex. That's very kind. And whatever you said, thank you. We have a home of peace, or at least we attempt that. So when we get to the New Testament, very similar idea. Okay, so irene becomes our word in the New Testament. A lot of the same flavor. Okay, so but the bigger piece is that Jeremiah 29:11, that Isaiah 9 has come. And the New Testament makes, and they just make explicit claims. So Ephesians 2:14 through 15, this is Paul talking about what Christ does for the Jews and the Gentiles. And he says, basically says, hey, look, we don't have, within our culture and within our customs, there's no reason for us to have peace with each other. We've had enmity for a very long time. If you look at the history of the Jewish people among the Romans, particularly in Ephesus and so on and so forth. And the Jews would be an ethnic minority who had faced, racism is an antiquated word, but the equivalent of racism then. And, or no, it's not antiquated, what's the right word? Anachronism. That wouldn't be the way, but you guys are tracking with me. And so, but in Christ, what he comes is he knocks down the dividing wall of hostility, and he is our peace. And the reason why this works is because we are no longer our own, but we are in Christ. And so therefore, because we are in him, we have peace because we're united in Christ. So whatever used to separate us has to be subservient to what we have in common, which is our shared salvation. And because we share salvation in one Christ, we should not let our gender, our class, our ethnicity, none of that should be dividing us any longer. But we should, in Christ, be the people who are peacemakers, is what Paul is saying to the Ephesians. Jess, you got Colossians?
For God was pleased to have all his fullness dwell in him, and through him to reconcile everything to himself, whether things on earth or things in heaven, by making peace through his blood shed on the cross.
Yeah. He makes the peace. He dies in order to finally, whatever enmity existed between us and man, he makes peace between us and man, but in doing so, he makes peace between us. Again, this is the same idea that Paul is saying over and over again. John 14, Jesus even says this. He's going to do this in John 14:27. He says, my peace I leave with you. My peace I give to you. I do not give to you as the world gives to you. The world's shalom, I give you my shalom, my irene. Don't let your heart be troubled or fearful. So I'm giving you a peace that leads to an internal state of being. Do you catch that? Because Christ has given you his peace, you don't have to be troubled or fearful. Why? What's the biggest thing you should be fearing enmity from? The one that can kill the body or the one that can kill the soul? And now you have what? Romans 5, peace with God. Says you don't got to worry about this any longer. I'm giving you my peace. I'm Jeremiah 29:11. I'm Isaiah 9. I'm giving you myself. And this is that concept that is picking up on. So the result of our peace having come, of Christ having come, we can be people who deal in the currency of peace. In the same way that in the Old Testament it says, hey, don't hope in people. And then Jesus comes and he's our hope. Then Paul says, oh, we can hope in people now because we have Christ. So now Paul is saying to people, hey, grace and peace to y'all. I hope you guys are working out your shaloming. Like I hope y'all are shaloming in your community. And then Jesus tells us, blessed are the peacemakers. Be at peace with all men. As far as you can control it, be at peace with people. Don't be striving in this world. Be people who pursue shalom. You can now experience peace as a state of rest because the enmity is gone. What used to be strife is now gone. Those false prophets who said, hey, peace, peace. And the other prophets say, no, you have no peace. Now the true prophet has come and says, oh, no, you have peace now. You have your shalom. If you want it, walk in your peace. Walk in your belongingness. And you can know that peace is a normal state which corresponds to the will of God, and you can work towards that. How many of y'all who have been walking with the Lord 10 plus years, outside of traumatic circumstances intruding, are experiencing more peace as the years go on? Did you do that? No. Okay. For you young folks, it'll get better. I mean that. Like this is part of maturing in Christ, is the fruit of the Spirit bears more fruit, bigger fruit, more expansive fruit, love, joy, peace, patience, goodness. I got to get there. Like, right? This is what it means now, is the peace that we so eagerly desire has come, taken up a home among us, given us his peace, made peace between us and God, makes it possible for us to have peace among each other. And because of that peace reigning in our lives, we can experience in our lives, you know what? Everything is in its right place and in its right relationship. And the things that aren't, I'm going to strive toward that. But with each passing year, I'm growing more steady in this feeling of peace because I'm moving in a telos. That is what peace does for us. So, peace is the state in which we're to live. And when peace is broken, we make acts of peace to restore it. We shalom back to where it should be. We make amends. We do the steps. Some brokenness was too big for us, and so our peace came into the world and gave us his peace. We couldn't fix all of the brokenness. There were some shaloms we couldn't fix. We broke too big. Genesis 3 broke too big. Now, Exodus tells us what to do when your ox falls in the hole. We couldn't fix what we broke in Genesis 3. So our peace says, I got that. I'll come. I'll fix it all. I'll spill my blood. And he comes and he becomes our peace. So now we are true peacemakers. And we recognize that the work of peace is marked by repentance, humility, conflict resolution, forgiveness, amends, and grace. And we await a perfect peace when all will be made right. But until then, we're peacemakers. We do the work. We put things back where they belong. We put relationships back where they belong. That's who we are. So in this Advent, our Advent of peace, our peace came, and we want a bigger peace. That's what we want. We long for more of that peace. So what's our so what? It's more than a state of mind. It's the inbreaking of the kingdom of God that makes people peacemakers. If tomorrow, if dispensationalists are right and boom, we're gone tomorrow, the peacemakers should have been taken up. there will be people that will be grateful. Their neighbor who is so like full of strife and vitriol and vinegar and all that, they're like, well, they're gone. Thank God. Now I have peace again. That shouldn't be. They should be sad that the one at the office who works towards peace, the one in the family who doesn't let people get away with the passive aggressiveness, the one who says, hey, I feel tension here and I don't want that and I don't want to ignore it and I don't want this to fester and I want to lean in and I want to be restored. Like, they should be sad if we were gone. We should have an impact on the place around us because we are the peacemakers, which means peace is more than just a spiritual state of mind. It's ethical, it's relational, it's moral, and it's spiritual. And because Christ gives us his peace, he is the true north. So if you want peace, move toward him. And as you're moving toward him, you will find you seek to make relationships whole. You seek to make things right. You seek to restore things that are broken, because that's the kind of work, when you move toward Christ, you end up engaging in. And then finally, we long for the fulfillment of peace when all is finally made completely right. That's what we want. We want to get there. So we're going to take a moment and we're going to imagine what that would be like. This is our assignment tonight. On your Shalom board over there, if everything, and I mean everything, if everything were in its right place and right relationship, what will not be there? What will be there? How will it sound? How will it smell? How will it look? How will it feel? What is it you're most looking forward to when this happens? That's what your sticky notes are for. Take a beat and start writing when everything is in its right place and its right relationship. I'll be able to talk to so-and-so again. I won't feel shame about that. It'll smell like chocolate chip cookies year-round. I don't know. But whatever it is, what will peace feel like, smell like, look like, taste like, experience? Write that on there and then just start sticking them up there. So y'all got some time. We've got time. Take a beat. But let's imagine what peace would be like. That's where we're going. And if that's where we're going, it should feed us now. So to that end, this Advent season, I was telling the gals, like, December is just a high tide in church work because it's awesome. Like, it's a high tide. It's great. And I was saying, like, doing a class during Advent, I knew I was going to be, I knew the end of the semester as a TA, I'd have a ton of grading, I knew travel, kind of knew all this stuff. I was like, I really want to do this because I want to create opportunities to practice Advent, not just talk about it. So last week, if you were here for Hope or if you were at the sermon, we did our one-sentence prayer. So this week, to practice peace, now that we've gotten a glimpse of it, this is what I'm encouraging us to do. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. What is one thing you can do this month to bring a little peace on earth? Is there a donation you can give, an apology you can make, forgiveness you can extend, or not even maybe you're not there, but a move toward it? Asking God to help you get there. Is there a debt you can pay back? Is there something broken that can be fixed? And I mean physically. Like, I don't even necessarily mean relationally. I mean, is something broken in your home you can fix and say, that's shaloming? Is there a way you can do shalom this month? So I just want y'all to take a moment, think about that for yourselves, and go in peace and make shalom in this world.